Hi, my name is Susanne Bendoraitis. I'm a coach and consultant for the Center for Parish Development, and I am so excited today to have Reverend Dr. Steve Slagel with me. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about work that we are doing at the center and a process that we have the opportunity to invite you to learn more about. So, Steve, first of all, could you just introduce yourself to us? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. For nearly 30 years, I served as a congregational pastor in congregational ministry. But now for the past number of years, I've been working as a facilitator with congregations that are seeking to understand God's given identity and purpose for them. And within that, then, I started just a couple of years ago with a conversation with Ray Schulte of the Center for Parish Development. Our conversation was about how we might help congregations to discover their own narrative in a context of God's narrative. And the fruit of the conversation now is our development of the living God story through the wilderness process. I've partnered with Ray and the center to grow the process and facilitate the process with congregations. So that's my role with the center.
Great. Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to learn more about living God's story through the wilderness. But before we learn more about that, can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by narrative?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great question. Every congregation has a narrative. We arrange our memories, our experiences, our central values as congregations into corresponding stories. And our shared story together forms a narrative, which is arguably the most significant influence on our future together. Then when we interact with God's narrative, which is the story of God that we find in Scripture and God's missional invitation to us as congregations, our narrative together is molded and shaped in a new way. And our story is transformed more and more as we live the story of God.
That is really helpful, thinking about our own narrative as a congregation and then how we live into God's narrative. I love hearing about that. Well, tell me a little bit more about this opportunity of participating in the process of living God's story through the wilderness.
Sure. Well, we believe that God is actively engaged in ongoing redemption in our world. But at the same time, congregations through this COVID-19 pandemic have been thrust into a real wilderness of uncertainty as our influence in our society continues to fade. And so we're full of questions and wondering about where are we headed? Who are we in the midst of all this? And the shape of our congregation's narrative has never been more important than it is right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And COVID-19 has brought us more into maybe thinking about our narrative and asking those questions. So tell us a little bit more about how this process works.
All right. Well, the way we've designed the process at this point is that we would ask for a congregation to put together a listening team, a group of people that can develop the skill of listening to the stories of the congregation, and through interviews with people within the congregation, that listening team will begin to open up conversations about the church's story. They will invite the congregation to speak the church's stories by answering questions like, who have we been? Who are we now? And who is God calling us to be?
I love that. And as a congregational pastor, I love the idea that the process puts our congregation in conversation with one another, that through COVID-19, we've had that sense of disconnection. And as we're re-entering our own story in a new way, that this process actually invites that reconnection and that invitation as we do learn about our own story and how we can live in God's story in this time that has really felt like a wilderness.
That's right.
Steve, thank you so much. I am excited to be able to share this process and opportunity with people. And if you're watching and this has been something that you think I want to learn more, then follow the link that is provided or just contact us at the Center for Parish Development. And we will be excited to talk to you more about how you can be involved and how you can join your congregation in learning about living God's story through the wilderness. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Bye.